English with Deck. Alright, how is everyone today? Be good? Yeah! Not too shabby? Nice, nice, nice. Okay, guys, well, it's Deck here from Deck English with another episode of English with Deck. Let's go! So, today I just want to talk about my daughter's sports day, or as it's also known, sports festival. Now, the day started off as a pretty regular day, emotions were pretty high, My daughter was a little nervous about the day, She had to perform, race in front of, well, pretty much everyone from the school and their parents. So, there's a bit of nerves and a bit of excitement and a bit of apprehension, maybe. But anyway, the morning went off without a hitch. Breakfast was eaten, clothes were worn, hair was styled, bags were packed, and then suddenly. So, are you going to school by bus today, or are you getting a lift from us? I think I'm getting the bus, she said. You think? You think? Well, which is it? Well, I think I'm getting the bus. And then she said something like one of her friends mentioned it. So we were like, okay, well, we can leave a little bit earlier for the bus and then get to the bus stop, assuming that another parent brings their kid there before the scheduled departure time. Then we're okay, we're safe, And if it goes past the departure time by a couple of minutes, there is a good chance the bus is not coming, and especially if there is no one there. And it's not too far from our house, so at the end of the day, it's not a big issue, but you think? Now, I'm assuming the teacher told her. I'm going to assume the teacher said it many times. But, there was a lot to think about for her. She had a lot of things to remember. So, it's not a big issue. Anyway, turned out it was the bus. She was right. So she got on the bus, and then my wife came back home, and me, my wife, and youngest daughter made our way over to the school. And my gosh, it was a good event. For example, in England, an English sports day is it's a fun event. Don't get me wrong. It's nice. It's enjoyable. Maybe it was just the schools I went to, but honestly, it's nowhere near as organised and spectacular, if I'm honest. So the sports day in England, you have a little announcement from the head teacher, maybe a couple of staff members, just do a little, oh, the kids are doing really well, la 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 la. And then it sort of gets underway. To my memory, there's no sort of performance or exhibition sort of thing from any of the clubs. There might be, I can imagine there would be a band if you went to a school which had a pretty prestigious band. However, there wasn't anything like that when I was there in junior or high school. However, for my daughter's school, well, it starts off as a whole ceremony. So they're doing like the little flag spinning and stuff like that, and it's pretty cool. And then there's a few other kids getting involved in a little marching parade. It's almost like a parade. So that was pretty new to me. And then the event kicks off, and then they do a load of, I should say, all the kids sort of come forward. They sort of march. It's all very organised, a bit regimented. And then they do the little Japanese national anthem, Then they wait patiently whilst there are some speeches made. And then after that, they did a little, what's called a radio Taiso. And that is basically the morning workout, So it's how the kids sort of stretch out, And this is really common in not just settings like school, but in the workplace and stuff like that. It's actually a pretty good workout. It sort of stretches the entire body. And yet, every morning this is played on the radio, hence the name. However, it is also on the TV in these days as well. And I'm pretty sure the vast majority, probably 99% of people who've been here a reasonable amount of time, especially those who have sort of been in education here, will know what the radio Taiso is, and I mean the how to do it. Anyway, after that, they start getting all the events. So obviously you have a few racing events, and then after that you have another performance, and then following on from that, they start to do these group exhibitions, which are absolutely spectacular. You have 40, 50, 60 kids all performing together in synchronization. And it's moving. It really is moving. But this is where it gets very different from the English one. So, for example, I remember back in my school days, back in my day, there wouldn't be anything like that. However, you would have various racing events. And then following on from that, you would have, in my school anyway, we had a few javelin events. And I believe we also had a couple of other track and field style events, long jump, high jump, I think we might have done as well. And it was very much class v class, class versus class. And then the champion would be crowned at the end of it. Ho ho ho. But here it was very similar to that. It's like the class versus the class in that sense. But there was a lot less sporting events than I would have expected. And it was much more performance, which is absolutely awesome, and it's really special to watch. But it did make me realise the stark contrast in, well, not just the culture, but in the way of performing during the sports festival. And that is exactly why it's called a festival more than a sports day, in my opinion. Because, well, here it's seen as more of a festival event, it's more of a celebration, a performance, an exhibition. And actually, following on from that, I did find out that in the past, this was not a half-day event like it is now. It was a full-day event. So it makes even more sense there. However, obviously with the population decline in the rural areas of Japan, a lot of schools, my daughters included, have gone from a full-day event to a half-day event, as there simply aren't as many kids anymore, meaning that a full day would be very taxing on the children and the parents, of course. And then, following on from today, my daughters... Oh, I'm sorry. That was a good stretch. Wow. When you just... It hits the spot, You sort of, your whole body just... like a cat. You stretch out like a cat. Yeah, and then after the event, everyone sort of pitched in and lent a hand to quickly tidy up all of the marquees, the general chairs, equipment, everything. And within 10, 15 minutes, boom, everything done, back to normal. There was a few little bits which some staff members will do themselves, but wow, it did amaze me, and I've seen it before. But when there is an event, especially at schools here, people, without being needed to be told, just pitch in, and suddenly the equipment, for use of a better word, is cleared away. It is back to square one. It is a blank canvas again. And that is quite a sight to behold. So guys, I'd love to hear, what does a sports day or a sports festival in your country consist of? Do you have the whole performance style events going on? Is there a marching band? Do you do various track and field events on the day? Do you have separate days for these kind of events? How does it work? Please let everyone know in the comments. And of course, don't forget to give it a like, give it a share, give it a review, and tell your friends. Shout it from the rooftops. Dick English, English with Dick. You don't have to shout it from the rooftops, but you can shout it from the window if you like. Ah, good stuff, good stuff. Okay, guys, well, look, remember, English doesn't have to be difficult. Bye now.